How do cybersecurity standards help mitigate these threats, which Srini just elaborated, in which we face with our customers? Can you provide an example, such as a framework, your NIST CSF, for improving critical infrastructure, cybersecurity, and basic cyber hygiene practices? So, how does this help mitigate this?
Thanks for the question, Niels. And Srini, you brought up a lot of really good points there. You touched on the NIST risk management framework. So starting with that, organizations following the NIST RMF are able to kind of look at what their systems provide, and it helps guide them on figuring out what kind of risk do they face, how do they mitigate it, what's acceptable risk. So starting at that point, you can then use the NIST cybersecurity framework, which Niels, you just alluded to. And there's 6 main functions in that will give you outcome-based objectives for how to identify all the systems that you use, how to protect them, how to detect any sort of anomalous activity, how to respond to it, how to recover to it, and then what kind of governance exists, like what kind of compliance regimes do you have to adhere to in regards to all these other functions. And so these are at a high level of outcomes you're trying to achieve that can be communicated all the way up from the C-suite down to security engineers. And while I'll touch on some standards that NIST has that can help you achieve the outcomes that you want identified in the CSF, but a very nice aspect of the CSF is it includes pointers to just standards that help you meet these outcomes. So if there's something that NIST might not have specific guidance on, you can plug in other existing standards guidance or standards documents from other SDOs that will help you achieve these sorts of mitigations. But to Srini's point about making sure you're developing software correctly, there's also a NIST secure software development framework that lays out different groundwork for how you can securely develop your software, starting from the tool chain you use for all the coding practices, into the building and testing environment, making sure that you have like correct test cases involved. You're doing security scanning or vulnerability scanning for the software you're developing and testing that before you actually deploy it to production. There's other guidance that NIST has as well around platform resiliency. So to make sure that all your platforms that make up the computing environment for your mobile network that run all of the 5G software can be attested to, and that you kind of mitigate any sort of firmware malware vulnerabilities. We have a document that gives guidance for container security. As 5G is becoming more cloud native and all of the network functions are becoming containerized and spun up on like hundreds or thousands of pods of containers, you want to make sure that your container images are handled and managed correctly, as well as how they're deployed and orchestrated. You want to make sure that the correct versions of container instances are deployed and that they're free of major vulnerabilities. Srini also mentioned the Nokia's key management product. So NIST has a lot of experience and a lot of history putting out like cryptographic guidance and standards, as well as key management guidance. So again, that's another NIST standard or guidance that you could take to make sure that you've implemented your key management solution correctly, whether it's following how to implement a root CA or just correct like lifespans for different certificates, how you manage that. And finally, there's other NIST documents that may not be specific standards or guidance, but can give pointers on other topics. For instance, there's a document that we've leveraged in our collaboration with Nokia that looks at using hardware-enabled security to make sure that all the computing platforms within a 5G core network have hardware roots and trust enabled on them to make sure that the computing platforms are trusted when they boot, so that that, for instance, someone hasn't come in and modified your firmware. So there's lots of different standards and guidance documents that NIST has and other SDOs has that can all be kind of wrapped up and pointed to in the overall NIST CSF that helps you meet the security outcomes that you're trying to achieve.